Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here today with Bruce McCurdy. Yeah, that was the sound of air deflating from every Oilers fan today. The Seattle Kraken have signed Adam Larsson, Bruce, and it's one of those. There's been about, I don't know, 10, 20 really terrible days for Oiler fans in terms of players, transactions, and for me at least, I'm sure I'm not speaking for all fans, but for me, this is one of them. This has the same feeling I've had on those other days when we've lost really players that I really cherished on the Oilers. Terrible day when Pronger left. Terrible day for many when Taylor Hall left. Not, I was more philosophical that day. Obviously, a terrible day when Gretzky left. And it just brings back those kind of horrible feelings for me, at least, of hopelessness as an Oilers fan. If I'm completely honest, it's a gut punch to the franchise. Uh, a month ago, Bruce, we were hearing that the Oilers were 85 to 90% certain of signing Adam Larsson. Seemed like in the bag. Something happened in between that and now. The main thing, obviously, in terms of the Oilers, is they traded for Duncan Keith. I don't know if this is related to that. They had to protect Duncan Keith, which probably precluded them then signing Larsson so they could protect him. Bruce, it's a gut punch, and it's hard for me to see it anything else as but a massive screw up on the part of Oilers management as well. He signed for 4 years for $4 million, which is the same kind of. It seems like some team showed him some love, and another team maybe didn't quite get that done. I mean, there could be other reasons. He just the thought of Seattle, living in Seattle as opposed to Edmonton, the challenge of going to play for a sparkling new expansion team as opposed to staying in Edmonton. Although the Oilers have a pretty good team as well. Your thoughts, Bruce?
Yeah, morning, David. The Oilers have less of a pretty good team now than they had 24 or 72 hours ago. In my view, they have lost a guy that filled a role that's not going to be easily filled in his absence. Goodness knows the club paid a high enough price to bring this guy on when they desperately needed a qualified right shot defenseman, and he played out the 5 years remaining on his contract, and here we are 5 years later, ruining the day that he's moved on and left a similar hole on the back end. There's immediate talk, of course, that the Oilers are going to move on and now pursue Plan B, or as I call it, Plan BBB, of signing Tyson Barrie and topping up a right side that includes Evan Bouchard and Ethan Bear. And it's not ideal in the sense that there's too many similarities and not enough, there's not enough D in all those B's, right? I wrote at some length about this last night on a post that's, not entirely obsolete, but certainly I could change the headline right now about, Larsson's impact on the Oilers and why he was a preferable keep to Barrie, because they've got now sort of two, assuming they do sign Barrie, which is a big assumption, and he's now got all the chips in his corner in terms of negotiating power. The Oilers want to keep him, and Barry's asking for term and dollars. Well, anyway, it's a gut punch. I mean, Larsson was part of the Oilers' core leadership group. It looked like he was fully embedded on the team, and yet, when the Seattle option was out there, which Seattle had exclusive negotiating windows with UFAs for this past 3 days. And I thought he's going to go there and he might get a sweeter offer and he come back to Edmonton and they might have to top theirs up or something. I didn't think he would sign like during the window, and I certainly didn't think he would sign for as little as 4 times $4 million. If the Oilers aren't competitive with that, there's something wrong. Granted, $4 million in tax-free Washington's a little bit different than $4 million in Alberta and Canada. But holy moly, David, it's it does raise questions about the priorities of Oilers management, that they went out and traded for and protected Duncan Keith and tried to finesse Adam Larsson through this expansion process and failed to do so. And they wind up with an older defense core that's more expensive and has to me more vulnerabilities. Like Larsson filled a spot that was pretty important to Edmonton, and not sure who they got internally that's going to do that.
If I said it once, Bruce, I said it a million times. If the Oilers lose Adam Larsson, they will be looking for a player just like him for years to come.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll stick to that. I just think, when you look at internal options,
mm-hmm.
Dmitry Samorukov was a left shot D-man who played on the right side for CSKA in Moscow, did a really good job in the KHL as a shutdown D-man. But he's a couple years away, I think, from being a realistic player in terms of filling in for Larsson in that same role. I think he could one day do it. I think it's a possibility. He's big, he's fast. So he's got, but it's like all younger players. It's just a chance. It's not until you actually see it happening in the NHL. It's more of it's a good bet, in terms of if you're looking to sign Adam Larsson and then work someone in towards the end of his contract, Samorukov would have been the guy. Right. But to count on him for next year, I think the Oilers' best bet is not to sign Tyson Barrie, but to So all these people, sorry, all these people who think Ethan Barrie,
the word on everybody's lips this morning.
All these people who think Tyson Barrie's going to fill in, or excuse me, Ethan Bear is actually like, there's some Oiler fans who, the on-ice analytics, shot metrics crowd who really think Ethan Bear is a really strong defenseman right now, mm-hmm. and can be a top 4 D-man with the Oilers. Well, I hope they're right, because the Oilers are now counting on Ethan Bear as your top pairing guy. Now, if you go with Ethan Bear and Evan Bouchard on your second pairing, and then you bring in a veteran like Travis Hamonic, like your best kind of replacement for similar to Adam Larsson, but not Adam Larsson, as your third pairing guy, as your so you don't lose that physical player presence on the right side. You bring in that guy, and you move on from Tyson Barrie. That's probably the best bet in terms of like having that kind of player to throw out there in certain situations, even if he's not as good as Adam Larsson. Maybe that's the plan, Bruce. But then you're counting on Ethan Bear and Evan Bouchard in your top 4. Which strikes me as like, wow, like I don't have that kind of faith in Ethan Bear. I think there's a chance he can be a top 4 D-man. I think Evan Bouchard will be a top 4 D-man, but it would have been nice to work him into that role rather than throw him into that role.
Bear's got good results with McDavid over his career, and plays well on that unit according to results when they're out there together. But last year he was, Barrie took over on the top pairing, and they did the 5-man unit with McDavid and Puljujarvi and sometimes Draisaitl and sometimes Nugent Hopkins. If they sign Barrie, they'll probably go back to that as their plan A. But who's going to shut down the other team? Who they put out there with a 1-goal lead in the last 2 minutes of the third period. There's a gaping hole. I mean, you mentioned Hamonic. There's a guy out there like Justin Braun, for instance, experienced right shot defensive defenseman, but they'd have to trade for him. There are guys out there. Radko Gudas is such a player. Or you can move a lefty in there, but you got to find the right lefty. in agreement with you that Dmitry Samorukov, as promising as he is, has 0 NHL games played. I mean, when Adam Larsson came to Edmonton, he had 4 NHL seasons under his belt, and he was still growing into a role. I mean, it's just not something that you can realistically put on a rookie, nor is it something you can realistically put on a 38-year-old who the vision was when the Oilers acquired Duncan Keith and went the expose Larson against Seattle route, and maybe they couldn't have signed him anyway. Like, this might be beside the point to a degree, but the idea was they were going to put Keith with Larson, and it seemed like, if you were going to find a good pairing for Keith, that was probably going to be it. Well, now who do you put him with? And anyway, it's a disquieting morning, to say the least, on a number of levels, frankly.
Bruce, let's go through the comments that we've been reading on Twitter. And let's start with the Oilers insider, Bob Stauffer. I think that's a good place to start here because, Bob works for the team. He's also got his own voice on Oilers Now, obviously. And
right.
He says this, quote, Adam Larsson held the cards as a UFA. He played hard for Edmonton and chose a different option. My belief is the players drafted and developed by an organization often have the greatest tie into the club. One day, soon, Evan Bouchard will be part of the Oilers core. So this is, I took this as, Bob selling, trying to put some lipstick on this pig and selling hope. This is what you do typically when you lose a veteran player. A really, a key veteran player is you sell hope for the future. And, I have lots of hope about Evan Bouchard too. But go ahead.
Here's my pushback against that comment. And, where Bob says, and I agree with him 100%, my belief is players drafted and developed by an organization often have the greatest tie into the club. And my immediate response from reading that was like Taylor Hall.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was a guy who grew up an Oiler, didn't want to leave town. They traded him for Adam Larsson. I mean, and the trade, we've been to hell and back discussing that trade in Oilogosphere. But the point is that it was one of many, 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 many deals over the years where the Oilers had a guy that they developed within their organization to a certain point, and they just gave up on him because they saw greener grass somewhere else and moved on. I mean, this summer we finally have the shining exception to the rule with the re-signing of Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who's actually going to play as an Oiler into his 30s. But I don't know how many times I've written a post saying they've got to grow and develop players within the organization. And through a series of general managers, the Oilers have failed to do that. The guys that they've grown and developed within their organization are mostly first-round draft choices, mostly top 10 draft choices, in many cases first overall draft choices. And they had... they had 6-7 years here and they were gone, traded out of the organization, 25, 26 years old, time and time and time again. And so, I mean, to Bob's point, I think he's right, but I just don't see where the organization actually believes in that credo of sticking with the guys with the Oilers logo tattooed on their heart or their butt or whatever body part that people say when they talk about somebody, a tried and true veteran of the team. And it's, it stands in stark contrast to many successful teams where you find not only just the top guys on the team, but you'll find third and fourth liners and second and third pairing guys and tweeners and stuff that have just, been with the team for many years. And it's a fail by the organization on that front. As for the rest of what Bob says about Evan Bouchard, well, sure. Hopefully he'll be part of the core. Hopefully they won't be giving up on him when he's 25 years old. I do agree with his second part of his tweet. It'll be difficult to replace Larsson, who is unequivocally a top four shutdown right D. There's a few righties that fit the mold of a version of Larsson, who many would see as third pairing right D, who have size and could stop cycles. I guess we'll see. So,
yeah, that's Bob telling the truth there. Like, well said, Bob. That's exactly right. I guess, I've been trying to think of consoling statements for Oilers, consoling statements and thoughts on this morning. Like, the Islanders lost John Tavares,
right.
and kept on ticking. If you were to, Adam Larsson he's 29 next year. He's got a bad back. There was a chance that, he had 2 years in Edmonton that were poor. So there's a chance that this won't work out with, if his injury flares up again. But, obviously, there's a better, I just think there's a much better chance that Seattle has got a really good player here. All right, let's look at some of the other comments here, Bruce. TSN's Ryan Rashog. Oilers had multiple offers on the table for Larsson, including a 4 and 5 year term. Sense is this wasn't a decision made based on the Oilers being outbid. Likely Larsson deciding on a change of scenery.
Well, the change of scenery, there's one thing that happened during Larsson's stay here which can't be undone. And that was in 2018, I think, winter of 2017-18, when his dad came to Edmonton to spend some time with Adam. And while he was here, he had a heart attack and died. And 50 years old. And I can only imagine, because my dad lived to a ripe old age, but I can only imagine the devastating impact that would have on him. And maybe the chance to turn the page. They showed him Seattle and the Space Needle, and all the water.
Jimi
there.
Hendrix Experience Museum.
yeah, exactly. And he went, you know what? I'm ready for something different. And where do I sign? Because, the money that he signed for was not out of line with everything that was being talked about here, was it? 4 times 4. Like, if they signed for 5 times 5, you'd at least be saying, well, that's probably beyond the Oilers' budget. And I think we were all saying Ken Holland there has to be some point there where Holland draws a line in the sand and says this and no more for term or dollars or the combination of the two. But 4 times 4 is pretty bloody underwhelming to be that figure. So there's more to it, and the more to it doesn't look great on Edmonton. I'll read one back to you now. This is Boston hockey writer Joe Haggerty, Hacks with Hags, who often has controversial opinions about other teams than Boston. He says, wasn't a big part of the Edmonton sell job on the Duncan Keith trade that he was going to form this top pairing with Adam Larsson. Now he's signing with Seattle. Oilers looking one step behind at every turn right now.
They are, Bruce. This is from Oiler fans, Troy, at Heavy Oil Country. Whether we are willing to admit it or not, Larsson probably felt underappreciated here by the fan base since day one, because we really did underappreciate him. How do you not go 4.5 million times 4 for Larsson? And I don't know, Bruce, like if that had an impact. It is true that there was some blowback because of the Taylor Hall trade from day one with this player, where some people judged him harshly. But by and large, I think fans, especially, the first year he played very well in Edmonton. The Oilers got to the second round of the playoffs. Most Oiler fans at that point thought the Oilers got a win out of that trade. So and I don't think Adam Larsson was on Twitter a whole lot, where you'll see more of the negative stuff. Maybe
I
he heard
see that much negative, David.
Maybe,
it was Chiarelli that took the heavy heat for that, and who deserved it. I think a lot of people were able to separate the player from the trade that brought him here.
We're talking about underappreciation. So there was kind of I think that's a fair comment, that there was a reluctance from some to admit hey, this is a really good hockey player here, and the Oilers are lucky to have him. Just kind of normal things you might think about a player because it's with the backdrop of that trade. Was he underappreciated in the last year? I think as he played very well this year, like at the start of the year, yeah, there was fans all over him because he had a rough start, as will happen in Edmonton. But this year, I think there was lots of praise for Adam Larsson. I mean, if you ever listen to the Cult of Hockey podcast, he would have heard it. We were, every second game, usually me, but is you as well, would pick him as one of the good things in the game because he was just so damn good all year long, shutting down top attacking wingers. Bruce, the ability to shut down that kind of player, listen, I hope Ethan Bear can hang in there, but I haven't seen that in Ethan Bear, if I'm honestly. And Tyson Barrie, come on. He is not a shutdown D-man when it comes to these players. Who are they going to play on the right side? I mean, they traded away Jeff Petrie years ago, who obviously can do that role. Now they've lost Larsson. It's just like it is a mess. So how are they going to, like, I guess you can try to have a track meet, right? Where in the regular season you just try to outscore with Barrie, Larsson, and Bear. And maybe that'll work in the regular season. It's hard to imagine this working in the playoffs, where they don't call anything and they hook and hold. And here's from hockey analytics writer Patrick Bacon at Top Down Hockey. To me, Edmonton letting Larsson walk is sort of like St. Louis Pietrangelo, where it might be the right move, but it's impossible to praise because of where the freed up money was spent. And unlike Pietrangelo, this is a move where I'd say bite the bullet and sign the aging D. So I guess he's referring to where the money was spent was on Duncan Keith, and it is kind of hard to separate those two moves, Bruce. I mean, a month ago we were hearing Larsson deal, sure thing. And what happened? Did they call Larsson up and say, we're going to bring in Keith, will you just wait? We're going to hold off on finalizing the deal until after the, and are you good with that? And maybe he sucked it up and said, oh, okay, I'm good. I'm okay. Or who knows what happened, right? We don't know, but this is the unanswered question right now, is what changed in the last month? And, as we heard Mark Spector, and he made a good point about these things. Mark, as of yesterday, was predicting the Oilers would still sign Adam Larsson.
Yep.
But both he and Bob Stauffer were saying, you never know until the name's on the dotted line. You never know. And Mark Spector brought up, anyone who's bought a house knows this, right? Till the deal's done. Like, so in our own lives, we all have a transaction, which is we can relate to, like, and I can tell you, that one really hit home for me. We had placed an offer on a house once. It had been accepted, and then suddenly they took a different offer, and there's nothing you can do, right? It's because it's kind of, you could, if you wanted to somehow pursue this in court or some crazy thing like that. But this is true. Like, until the name is on the dotted line, you don't have that name. You don't. But so what went wrong though? Because the money is the same, the term is the same, everything seems to be the same, and yet we went from real close certainty to signing this player to him leaving, not over money or term. So what happened?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Whether he didn't like the direction of the team. Last I saw of Larsson, he was enjoying a vacation with Leon Draisaitl, and I thought, oh, those guys look tight. This is we got a solid core group here. And so here's Paul Almeida at Azarkan Global, a longtime Oilers fan and pundit and a friend of mine. If the Oilers sign Barrie to a multi-year deal, I can't see Bear here very long, just my opinion, because he clearly doesn't like the BBB combination. And if Barrie is here and Bouchard is here, they need somebody that's very different from them as sort of the third regular right shot defenseman. And Paul goes on that he quotes Darren Drager, who's saying Oilers will re-engage with Tyson Barrie. There's been preliminary discussion and expected to intensify with Larsson leaving. Term is going to be the sticking point for Barrie. Don't think the Oil want to go 5 years. Does 4 times 5 million get it done? And Paul's quote, he says, "Yep, the Oilers are signing Barrie. Don't mind him, but he doesn't replace Larsson's physicality," which is no kidding. Larsson had 166 hits last year, and the other 3 guys combined had 68. Like,
so here's here. Listen, if the Oilers go in, let's put it this way: if the Oilers go in next year with Barrie, Bouchard, and Bear is with the 3B option. There's been years when we've had worse right shot D-man, right? There was throughout the decade of darkness. Throughout the decade of darkness, never came close to having 3 right shot D-man as good as that group of 3 players. So this isn't an unmitigated disaster. This is obviously not good. But those 3 players are all NHL players. They're all puck movers. They're all good players. They're just the issue is they're all too similar.
Right.
So could you? And the problem is to move to get a different kind of player, and you'd have to trade one of those guys. You'd have to give up an asset. Of course, Barrie is free. You just contract in term, and you'd have to make a trade. So would you trade like could you trade Ethan Bear or Evan Bouchard for an Adam Larsson type player? Would be the question, or Tyson Bear. Like, I don't see Tyson Bear signing here and then getting traded. So it would be Bear or Bouchard, and most likely Bear that would get traded for more of a shutdown D-man. Now, in defense of Ethan Bear, 2 years ago, the season he had with Darnell Nurse was pretty promising in terms of him looking like he might round into form as a top 4 D-man. So maybe we're going to see. It's possible we could see a massive. I think Ethan Bear took a step back personally. I don't care what his shot metrics said last year. I don't buy that. He took a step back. In terms of consistency, at least, Bruce. There was periods in the year where he looked really good, but there was also periods where he looked really iffy, including some plays in the playoffs. But maybe he takes a step up this year, steps into the void. He's a young veteran. If it's going to happen, if he's going to be a real top 4 D-man in the NHL, this would be a heck of a year for it to happen. And it could well happen in terms of the expected developmental curve of an NHL player. We could see Ethan Bear step up and be the Oilers' shutdown D-man, play solid defense. Now, is that a great bet? No, but it could happen. And then you have Evan Bouchard. Listen, he's a very talented hockey player, and so the Oilers aren't exactly bereft on the right side now. And could those 3 players get it done? It doesn't feel like the right mix, but they're all really good players.
Right. Yeah. Well, moving on from Ethan Bear, as Paul suggests might be imminent, would be another step away from what Bob Stauffer said about growing and developing guys within the team and going back to the shiny object on the free agent market. I mean, the better play maybe is to not sign Tyson Barrie and go hard after someone different. Go after Dougie Hamilton. Go big or go home. I mean, that's one thing they've got to pursue.
Don't go after Zach Hyman. Throw that kind of money and term plus at Dougie Hamilton. I would much rather see them do that. I think Dougie Hamilton's a much better bet than Zach Hyman over the next 5 or 6 years. Yeah, that would be a plan too, Bruce. I mean, so I think if you're the Oilers right now, you got to. Bob's message is correct. This is what you have to double down on. So the idea of trading Ethan Bear, you just got rid of Caleb Jones. You just went against the grain on Caleb Jones. You gave up on him, and you're going to give up on Ethan Bear. No, trading him doesn't strike me as plan A either. It's like double down on Bear and Bouchard, and think hard about who you're going to match with them, and don't lock into Tyson Barrie probably long term because he's too similar. What were you saying? Oh wow, about?
Oh, things happening quickly as insiders continue to break news. Price and Tarasenko not selected by Kraken.
Yeah.
Jaron McCann, Brandon Tanev, Yanni Gord, Adam Larsson, and Jamie Alexiak as UFAs. And Taylor Hall sounds like he's going to re-sign with Boston, according to Frank Saravalli and others, 4 times $6 million on the same day that Larsson signs 4 times $4 million. And our friend RCN from Calgary, very, very good, sharp account, pipes up. They signed 4 years on the same day, one at 6 and one at 4. Who won the trade? Yeah.
Today it was 1 for none for the Oilers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Not a happy moment, Bruce.
No, it's depressing. And you've heard me talk many times on this podcast about how, as an old goalie, I love the greasy defensemen that make marauding opposing forwards pay for their transgressions. And I was a big fan of Adam Larsson for just that reason, that he was, just rough and rugged and he wasn't I'll make the same distinction again. He wasn't a dirty player in the sense that he was a guy who took to, take advantage of opponents in vulnerable positions. He just took them out. And he reminded me so much of Jason Smith. And I was fairly disconsolate the day Jason Smith left town with 2 bad shoulders. And I'm kind of feeling the same, sort of morose man. This is, big weaknesses on the team, plus, one of my personal favorites gone, and I think they'll be a little bit less fun to watch without him, even as he's not a headline maker. I mean, he's like, you talk about underappreciated, he's like a great offensive lineman, in football, where you have
the right tackle.
a guy, the right tackle, and he can be the best right tackle in the league, but he's not going to score you many touchdowns, and he's just, what he prevents is far more important than than what he proactively accomplishes. But you got to have a good right tackle or left tackle, or you're in trouble. And the Oilers are in trouble as of now, more than they were going into this process. This is a real kick in the, we'll say gut, like your headline.
So the Kraken have, I hate the Kraken, by the way. The Kraken,
as of now, so do I
hate the Kraken. They took, some Oiler fans were thinking, oh, the Oilers maybe can get Dylan DeMello, but the Kraken didn't take DeMello. He's not a trade chip. They're going to take Mason Appleton, and Winnipeg's not.
Is that what you're reading now?
Yeah, Winnipeg's not going to give up on Dylan DeMello. Like they're thinking, oh, dodge that bullet. We got Dylan DeMello still, and at least, and there's no way he's popping free. But Dylan, that's a good example, Bruce, of what you might hope Ethan Bear, like if Ethan Bear was to develop into a player, Dylan DeMello was a strong shutdown D-man against the Oilers last year.
He's a fine player, Dylan
DeMello. You don't have to be huge to get that job done. I mean, Josh Morrissey's not a huge player. He's a strong shutdown D-man. So you don't have to be huge and big, and players can develop into it. Maybe Ethan Bear can do it. I mean, I think that's probably what they're hoping, is that Ethan Bear steps up and develops into the replacement for Adam Larsson. What are the odds of that happening? I don't know. Is it a coin flip that could happen for next season? Probably that's about right. That you'll get maybe not quite that good. In terms of not as being as good as Larsson. That said, there was times last year where Bear did really get the job done, and the previous year, it's a lot riding on him right now, as far as I can see. And I do think Evan Bouchard's going to step up and be a useful player. So.
Yeah.
Any more comments? Let's look at a Oiler fan, Shelly Sikorsky, at Ray Shelley. I just woke up and I'm already going back to bed. I can't believe we lost Larsson. Oh God. We were up, of course, we haven't talked. You and I were up till like 2:30 last night. We were having problems posting a story that you were working on. There were some technical issues.
About Adam Larsson.
About Adam
Not
Larsson.
that it had a short shelf life or anything, David.
No. So we were up late, and then we were up till like 2:30. I was still asleep when you called me at 8:30, and to tell me about this Larsson thing. So what a thing to wake up to. Oh God.
Yeah.
I was hopeful yesterday because it got to like 10 p.m. last night, Bruce, because I was worried about this in the background worry, like this could happen. And then I wasn't hearing it, right? I wasn't hearing any room. There wasn't even a rumor of this. No one rumored this. And I'm thinking, okay, this is not, we're going to survive this. Like he's not going to go to the Kraken. That's a really good sign. Specs saying he's going to sign in Oilers, Specs connected. I was, I had my fingers crossed. I was still pretty optimistic about it all. And then to wake up to that, oh God.
Here's Oilers fan Mo, one of my favorite Twitter follows, at Mo_EDMN. And he says, Ken Holland is playing chess. Yes, he is, against Gary Kasparov. Got a wicked sense of humor.
What is it? What is this? Is that at Mo 99?
Mo_EDMN.
Okay, let me just search that. I'm going to add that to my story.
Yeah, he's on the must follow list for me.
That's really funny.
He's sharp and funny. And
at Mo_EDM.
EDMN.
EDMN.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Oh God.
Oh, anyway,
I'll retweet that. That's a.
Yeah,
that's a gooder.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, they've done Seattle. I mean, if they got Appleton, okay, sounds like they got Tanev. They got Yanni Gord. This is going to be a tough team to play against. Adam Larsson, Jamie Oleksiak.
They got Jamie Oleksiak, the famous.
Apparently, they're signing him as an unrestricted free agent, just as they're doing with yeah. So, and before we go, which I have to do very soon because I'm due on the air with Low Tide here in a few minutes, and you're on with Bob Stauffer a little later today. This is media day for the Cult of Hockey. Stories that Mike Smith is coming back to a 2-year contract, and they're starting to spring up all over the place, which of course no signings can be done for another 28 hours or so. But if that's Ken Holland's reply to losing Larsson, well, at least we got Mike Smith back. Well, Mike Smith is going to have to be even better than he was last year to play behind this defense.
Yeah, and that's, of course, this news is not being greeted well in Edmonton with Mike Smith. I mean, one of the things we hear repeatedly from the insiders like Stauffer and Speck is it's not easy to convince players to come to Edmonton. And I think, and most of us, I have a tendency now and then to brush that off. Right. And some fans completely just brush it off. Like it's all like we can get whoever we want. We can get Dougie Hamilton. We can get Gabriel Landeskog. We're in on this. Like, so this is part of the equation here, I think, Bruce, is Edmonton doesn't have palm trees. Cal Nichols said it to me years ago. We don't have palm trees, and it's a big deal. And Mike Smith's contract, people will freak out about 2 years. Well, maybe this is part of the reality of Edmonton. Who are you going to get? Who are you going to get if you can't get Mike Smith? Is it as easy as you think? I mean, the Oilers, the other news was everyone, one of the rumors was Oilers are going to be in on Chris Streeter. Chris Streeter's now a Kraken.
He might to Seattle, yeah.
Yeah. So this is, in terms of when you factor in all of these signings and rate all of these different trades, you have to think okay, what was the alternative? And we don't often know what the alternatives were. So with Mike Smith, I'm real good with Mike Smith on a 1 year deal. 2 years, at his age, that's more of a stretch. It's probably not going to be for killer money. So if the plan is that he is your backup goalie or your 1B goalie and you bring in someone else still, this could still work. I don't mind Smith on 2 years as long as the plan is that, because even if you have to bury him, Bruce, bury the contract for a year, and for the second year you have a different backup. But I'm okay with Smith on the team next year. So,
well, I guess he's going to be anyway. Seattle's got a very strong start. I like the players they've targeted, and I think as of this moment, and let me revise this after we get the full list tonight. I'm installing them as second favorite in the Pacific Division behind their expansion brethren, Vegas Golden Knights. That's the top two teams in the division against 6 established NHL squads. Goes to say how good is the expansion process for the newcomers now, but it also speaks volumes about the failures of teams that have been around for a long time.
Well, Dallas is hurting as much as we are. Alexiak is as strong a shutdown D-man as Larsson, I think, right now. And maybe even a better bet in the incoming years, because I don't think he's had injury issues, and he's a great big guy who can skate. And that hurts Dallas. Unfortunately, Dallas isn't in the Oilers division. But yeah, Seattle, just imagine going up against Alexiak Larsson shutdown pairing. I mean, that's what I was hoping the Oilers shutdown pairing would be in my dreams. That's what it was going to be this coming year. And it is. It's just in Seattle. Right. Bruce, let's leave it there. You got to go. So,
yeah, final thoughts? I do. Got more morning to do on a different channel now. So, yeah, anyway, thanks for listening, everyone.
And in the meantime, and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.